and I won't get along. Hey, uphill battle, I look good when I climb. I love the view from the top. Hey! Hey everyone, welcome to a new installment of Ask Mark. It's been a minute since I've done a video blog, so I apologize for that. I'm sure you know the song. It's by Jessie J, Masterpiece from her latest album, Sweet Talker. I totally recommend you get the album, it's great. I love Jessie J. And the theme of today's video blog is Are We Enough? Talking about mental health, mental wellness, and like just really understanding like what it means for us to be enough as people. And I wanted to talk about this a little bit because as someone who suffers from depression and mental illness, and those family members and friends who suffer from mental illness, I think it's not something we talk enough about, especially among black and brown folks, people of color, and the LGBT community especially. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about it. I got a few questions from some Facebook friends, and yeah, we'll go from there. So, just a disclaimer, while we're talking about mental health and wellness, I am not a mental health professional. This is just my opinion, so please don't take these as medical advice. I don't want to be legally liable. So, one of the questions was how does one pick a therapy method or a therapist? Example, art therapy, music therapy, etc. So, I personally love talk therapy, and I loved my first therapist and I were together for about 4.5 years. So, I picked. In many ways, she picked me. We met in college, and I heard her talk about emotional intelligence, and I remember a couple months into my freshman year, my first semester in college, I emailed her and said, "Hey, I remember your lecture on emotional intelligence. You are Latina. You grew up in Patterson, like me. I want you to be my therapist, and I'll only go to therapy if you agree to be my therapist. I don't want anyone else." And that's how she and our relationship started. Um, I think it's a trial and error. I know for some friends they've had one therapist and that didn't really work out, so they went to the next therapist. It's like a relationship. So imagine going to a therapist as a first date, and if the first date goes well, you go to a second one, and if that one doesn't really go too well, you can always go to another first date with someone else. So that's kind of how I would go about finding a therapist. I know it's not easy for people who can't afford it, and they're limited by their resources, so I understand that. In regards to the method of therapy, I've only ever done talk therapy. It's one I personally love. Uh, yeah, but I know that like arts and crafts, like I did arts and crafts today, and I created this really cool anchor. I like colored in or markered in this anchor. The black one still has to get another coat, but arts and crafts is a really cool way. Brene Brown talks about cultivating play and rest and creativity. So that's one way to kind of deal with things. I was stressed out, so I did some arts and crafts today. And apparently it's still bleeding because I just got marker on my hand. No pun intended. Crap. Guess it has to dry. Okay, sorry, I digress. So yeah, that's how I would go about dealing with that. Why is it hard for, next question, why is it so hard for people to find peace of mind? I think it's hard because we live in a fast-paced society. There's so much happening, right? There's so much demands on our time and so much that we have to kind of deal with. So I think it's hard to find peace of mind when we feel so scattered and like on the go. I think for me, stillness is something I struggle with, and so during the times when I'm being idle or still, I have time to think about everything when I'm not busy working, and that makes it really difficult too. So I don't know, it's tricky. Peace of mind. I feel like it takes a lot of effort to just be still and like breathe. A friend told me the other day, we were talking on Skype, and he said, "Do me a favor, can you just like take a breath?" Because he felt my energy was off, and I took a breath, and it just made me feel better. So take a breath for that peace of mind. Next question. So I know someone, there's a situation. So I know someone who lies about everything, not to get out of trouble, to protection, but to impress people, I assume. It's created some really awkward moments, and now people are avoiding him. I'm sure the part of his lying is a part of a larger problem, and not sure calling him out would be effective. How would you approach this? I think it depends on the kind of relationship you have with the person. Like, if they're a really genuine friend and someone you're really close with, then if you're really good friends with this person, you should be able to just pull them aside and say, "Hey, listen, this is what I've noticed. What's going on? Are you okay? You seem to be having this kind of habit, and it's making me uncomfortable because it feels like it's affecting my interaction with you, and now people are avoiding you. What's going on?" So it depends on the friendship. If he's not someone, or I shouldn't assume it's a he. Oh, yeah, you use he pronouns. Um, if he's not someone that you genuinely care for, if you can let the friendship fall to the wayside, then I just wouldn't bother. Usually people who are dead set on lying don't always want to be called out, and they'll just get defensive. So it all depends on whether or not you think it's worth the energy. Honestly, I personally like honesty, and so I wouldn't want someone who continuously lie, and so I would just say to them politely, "I'm not really digging this, and I wouldn't hang out with them anymore." Number four, how does one recognize the difference between a mental health issue and just a regular frustration and stress? Is there a difference? Um, I think there is a difference. The best way to recognize the difference is, I mean, I believe everyone should get a diagnostic test. I think everyone should just kind of go to therapy once and just experience it. I know that's not always available to people, unfortunately. Um, but we all have things that are stressful in our lives and things that frustrate us. I think that it's when the frustrations and the stressors begin to overwhelm us and begin to cripple us that we need to think about ways that it may be more than just typical stress or frustration. Like when my depression started to manifest itself, I knew I wasn't just being irritable. I knew that like every little thing was bothering me, every little thing, and I knew that my mood swings and my imbalance was getting worse. So it all depends. Again, when in doubt, go to a professional who you feel safe with. Number five, how can you be more supportive with someone paranoid? With someone who is paranoid, schizophrenia, especially if it's someone you're dating. So, as someone who suffers from depression, as someone who is a relative and a good friend to someone who has bipolar, I can kind of speak from both sides of the token in the sense that I know what it feels like to be someone who loves someone who has a mental illness, and I also know what it feels like to be the person who has a mental health issue, and how that can kind of affect relationships. So, the first thing to be, I think, the first thing to do in order to be supportive with your partner would just be to ask them what they need. I think sometimes we try to assume what people need from us rather than just asking. Because as much as we don't know what they may need from us, they may not know either, but at least if we ask them, they can start the process of figuring out what they need to feel supported. They know what they need best, and I think sometimes we think we know what's best for them because we love them and we just want to help them, but that sometimes can do more harm than good. And so I think that the best way to support that person is to really make sure that you ask them how you can support them. Every individual is different. There's no guide, there's no book that says this is how you handle this situation or this person with this situation. You would have to communicate. Number six, how do you recommend putting your own mental health wellness first when there are so many demands on your time? Family, kids, work, being in five places at once, multiple deadlines, etc. How do you walk the fine line between your own health and making sure all the pieces, people in life are taken care of? That is indeed the most difficult thing in general, right? Just kind of finding balance between yourself and helping others. We live in a culture that equates self care to like being narcissistic and egocentric, and that's not the case. I think that we've become a culture that demands so much of an individual that if we no longer can produce at that level and just give, um, and not have to fulfill ourselves or take care of ourselves, that we're just some robotic thing, and we're not. We're human, right? And I think that what I've had to struggle with lately, especially, is and having to take care of my mother when she had her surgery, is finding a balance between taking care of her and making sure I'm taking care of myself. So taking care of myself meant that I was sleeping as much as I could. Taking care of myself meant that I was drinking more water. Taking care of myself meant that I would be able to help her, but still take care of my own issues, right, and my own things, and really find a balance. The biggest self care act I did recently was purchase a ticket to Miami, because I've been working like mayhem the last few years, and I haven't had a proper vacation. And last time I was in Miami about a year and a half ago, it was work, so it wasn't play. I mean, it was some play, obviously, but it was mostly work. And this time I'm just going for vacation. Like, no emails, nothing. Like, it felt freaking amazing. Well, it feels amazing knowing that it's coming in a couple weeks. So, how do you make putting your own mental health first? I always say that if you're not, sorry I rambled, but if you're not taking care of you, if you're not taking care of your own wellness, how can you expect to help others at your full capacity? Right? Because every time you give to someone, that takes a part of your energy away. I know for me, every time I give to others, I need to recharge my own batteries because I feel depleted after every time I give to someone else. And so, how are you going to keep giving if you aren't recharging yourself? And I think, there is a fine line between being egocentric and being selfless, but being selfless doesn't mean that you have to treat yourself any less. You are just as worthy of your own care and empathy as those around you are. If you have to remind yourself that you're enough and your effort is enough, and when the balancing act gets to be too much, just take a step back and do what my friend told me to do earlier. Breathe. Just breathe. Inhale. Exhale. Take a breath. Take a breath. Do it right now as you're watching this and I'm rambling. Take a breath. Close your eyes for a second. Just inhale. Exhale. Everything you have to get done is going to be there. But that stuff won't get done if you're not taking care of yourself. And how do you walk the fine line between your own health and making sure that people are okay? Listen, people are always going to need us, right? There's always going to be a to-do list, a deadline, a work project. There's always going to be demands on our families, from our families, our lovers, whatever. Like, I think it's also communicating that you need help. Saying, I can't handle this all by myself right now. I can use some support. Or sometimes my friends and I are really good at telling each other, hey, now is not a good time to talk, and I know that you need me, so can I call you back in 2 minutes, and I will give you a call back, and I will be there for you. Because sometimes you just need that 2 minutes to wrap up whatever you're doing, or you need that 2 minutes to prepare yourself mentally and spiritually for that tough conversation that's coming. And so kind of setting boundaries is really important, and so I think I would recommend that, like finding boundaries and knowing that you're only as good to others as you are to yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, how are you supposed to keep helping other people? And it also goes back to like practicing what you teach. So if you're trying to like teach other people to be empathetic to themselves so they can feel better, then you need to do the same for you. And that's my response to you. I know this is a pretty long video, so I'll keep my closing remarks relatively brief, and I just want to say, no matter what you're going through, no matter your mental wellness status or the stressors that come with life, I want to remind you that you are enough. That you're not going to be perfect. That you're not going to take care of yourself or others perfectly. That you're going to make mistakes. That you're going to get overwhelmed. That it's going to feel impossible at times. And that's okay. We're human. We should be entitled to that. But I want you to know that you are enough, and that there are people in your life who really appreciate you and love you just as you are, and they appreciate all the ways that you care and love for them. And, for the people who are liars, for the people who are off course and aren't really adding any positivity to your life, let those people go. Because when you let those people go, what you do is you allow your space to be detoxed. I think people always bring energy into spaces they enter, and people bring energy into our lives. And so be mindful of the relationships you're connecting into, because those connections could be draining you and not, powering you up. You want connections that are going to empower you and raise you to your best self. Not connections that are going to drain you dry and then burn out. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for watching this video. Feel free to share it with your friends or families or whatever. Visit my website, www.marktraversrivera.com. Hashtag MTR Speaks. I officially have an LLC, which is pretty awesome. Keep working on your masterpiece. You're a work in progress always. Love and light to you all. Bye.